Hello, everyone. Dr. Judy here, Dr. Judy WTF with the Freud. And you're tuning in to a call-in show, everyone. So please call in. That number is 323-843-2826. I think we already have a caller. Just one quick announcement. I am really wanting everybody to learn the Mindmap system. And I am giving a big Christmas present to all of you, a $400 discount off the Mindmap video series, which is normally $595. It's now $195. No excuse about 8 or 10 hours of therapy time, video time with me. I go through everything carefully. And I know that you are so psychoeducated already. The Mindmap video series will most definitely organize the information that many of you are already using. So let me take that call and then I'll say more later. Hello, you are on the couch with Dr. Judy.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, hi. Your name, please?
Carmen.
Hi, Carmen. Nice to talk to you. Where are you from, Carmen?
Well, I actually used to live in California for 20 years, and I'm living now back on the eastern side of this country, but I actually used to work in Sherman Oaks there back in the 80s.
Oh, well, I was going to say come over to the office, but I think it's a little bit geographically undesirable for you now. So exactly where are you?
I'm in West Virginia.
Okay. All right. And did you call in today? Is it the same Carmen or somebody different?
It is. I did call in today.
Okay. So thank you for calling into the show. And today's topic is damaging effects of narcissistic fathers on their children, part 2. And so if you can please keep the question relevant to the topic, I would really appreciate it, and so would the audience. So what the Freud is going on with your life and your family life?
Well, actually, it's about 4 years ago my father died, and based on all the chaos that took place surrounding his funeral, I came back home and did some Googling on the internet and found information on narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder.
Yes.
And so the last 4 years has been quite a journey in my learning, of which I've watched you quite a bit and a number of other people on YouTube.
Yes.
And I've read a lot of books. And so I realized that the narcissistic personality disorder has been in my family for generations. And there's been a lot of problems and issues, and I've been no contact with most of my family of origin for 4 years, and low contact with my mother.
Okay.
A lot of aha moments, and a lot of reflecting back on my own life and seeing the evidence of having been abused by both parents,
Yes.
narcissistic parents, and
physically or more emotionally, or both?
Both.
Okay. Well, it is a silent killer. Not everyone experiences the physical aspects of the abuse. Certainly people seem to be waking up, and now with the internet and having the ability to Google and learn, the shock of understanding how parents emotionally abandon, neglect, demean, devalue, destroy their children. So what have you learned in hindsight now that you're more educated?
Well, I actually see a lot more narcissistic people everywhere now than because I just become aware and I've woken up.
Yeah.
And it's kind of frightening to really realize how dysfunctional and how narcissistic people are in the world. And of course, there's different levels of it, and some of them can be annoying, and others can be very, very harmful and dangerous.
Absolutely. So, just for you to understand and the audience to understand, my definition of narcissism is, along with the general sense of lack of empathy, the inability to put yourself in another person's shoes and to feel for that person and to have absolutely no idea about your impact on that other person. So that's one way to see it. I see it also as a system gone wrong, starting with the blueprint. And as many of you know, I work with the Mindmap, the 9-panel journey to healing, which identifies these 5 childhood wounds. And in the case of narcissism, emotional neglect is very prevalent, as is physical punishment at times, and just a general reversal of the system where the parents put themselves before the child. So can you relate to that, Carmen?
Oh, absolutely. In
Okay.
fact, my mother was also very narcissistic, and she's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
But going very back to my earliest memories, I remember exactly that. I mean, even being afraid to even ask for a drink of water
That
when
you
I was
should,
really thirsty.
of course, you couldn't impose on them. If they're not in the mood to
Absolutely
get
not.
you that water, then you have to go get it yourself. And even worse, you might even have to get them a glass of water.
I actually had my mother tell me, and I know you're talking about fathers, but this would be in line with him as well. But
Mm-hmm.
I even had my mother tell me a story throughout my whole life, even as an adult, how it was when I was a toddler. I would get out of bed and go to my little rocking chair in the living room to rock. And she would wake up and hear me in there and take me and put me back into bed. And I would get right back up and go back out and rock.
Mm-hmm.
And this really annoyed her. And she was so upset with me for doing that one night. She went out and got me and took me and threw me and the rocker both in bed.
And she
Together.
threw you in the what?
And a little rocking chair. Put us both in bed so I wouldn't get out of bed and go rock. And I realize now that she did not want me soothing myself.
That's exactly what
And
I
I
was
knew,
thinking. What else were you to do? You were not getting soothing from her. She didn't get the memo that you needed her more than the rocking chair. She wasn't around. She got angry at you rocking in the rocking chair. Bottom line, you were trying your best to soothe yourself.
And what I think is really interesting about the whole situation is that I knew as early as 2 and 3 years old not to go to her for comfort, but that my rocking chair to go and soothe myself.
Yeah.
That's how her messages were. I realized that even as a young toddler, that she was emotionally unavailable for me.
Yeah, and for you to get that message, because I'll just have the mind map up on the screen so people can understand that these childhood wounds, they compromise our light. They compromise our ability to develop properly, like a shadowing over us, stunting our emotional, our physical growth, our spiritual growth, and so on. And so we have reactions, and that reaction to this stunting or the wounds of childhood, which I will repeat because there are 5 of them that I refer to: physical abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, neglect, smothering. I think I covered it all. I think I said sexual abuse somewhere in there. In any case, these forms of disconnect create reactions and then encoding. So in particular with the father-daughter, okay? The father-daughter, what does the father give a daughter? Esteem, a sense of feeling special to a man. And if that role model is not there, and if your mother didn't soothe you and you didn't have that good internalized sense of stable mothering within your fiber of your being, then the fact that your father was also not there for you puts you in what I term the double dungeon of darkness. And what I mean by that, I have my own vocabulary here. It means that you can't turn to your mother. She's not there. She's not going to soothe you. She's going to be angry at you for soothing yourself. Your father's not there because he's also self-involved. So you have no one to turn to but yourself. And within the core of a child, the child needs the parents to develop internally. And so when we are forced to go inward and there's nothing inward because it wasn't put there, it's very painful. And I refer to it as the hole in the soul. You still there, Carmen?
Oh, yes, I'm still there. I was just digesting that.
Yeah, I know. That was a mouthful.
It was a lot to digest.
Okay.
And I'm thinking about that. And what I mean by digesting that is because I have 2 older sisters and 2 younger brothers, and we were all spaced very close together.
Yes.
And so I can see the dynamics when you there were a couple golden children and a couple scapegoats and all of this. And so in the context of my siblings, I'm just digesting that soul in the soul. What was the phrase
the
you
hole
used?
in the soul, that deep sense of loneliness and emptiness. And see, you use the word digest. Okay, that's the problem with parents who don't have the ability to take in, because the narcissism is a defense. It's this psychological wall. And what they don't do is they don't digest you. So they don't ingest what you have to say or feel. They don't digest it because they haven't even ingested it, meaning taking you in, taking you seriously, taking your needs into consideration. So there's no interconnection there, and it leaves the person very alone.
And I think particularly about my sister, who's just 2 years older than me, I was able to find a way to soothe myself. My sister was different. My mom talked about how she was really irritating. When she was the tallest, she would walk around the house and pull on my mother's dress, begging for attention. And my mom was irritated by this and would push her away. Well, that sister is a total malignant narcissist who has been married 5 times, and I'm not sure, but I think that she may have murdered 2 of her husbands.
Wow. Well, then she crossed over to sociopathy. Speaking of not having any ability to feel for other people. So some people beat them. Some people join them. Some people become the slaves of the person exhibiting narcissistic personality disorder, because as children we want to be loved, and so we'll do anything to keep that bond. And so if your sister, for example, learned that pushing people away was just a good way to not get that involved emotionally, I guess that's what she learned. And so you found your own way of trying to soothe yourself and remove yourself and lower your expectations of your parents. Are you married?
I am married.
And did you marry a good guy? Somebody that is...
I am now. I've been married for 22 years, and I am married to a really good guy now. But my first, I was married before and not so good. So I kind of, between the marriages, I had 9 years by myself.
Okay.
And that was a good time for me to kind of, even though I didn't know about narcissism and all that, I did some growing, and I chose my husband now. I did a much better job.
So could you say that all of your psychoeducation led you to pick for different reasons? And here's part 2. Did you catch the Freud that you were doing, the repeat cycle? Did you catch it?
No, I just think that I was really lucky.
Okay. Because
I just think that I was really lucky.
Okay, so you see the difference, because what people do is they chase after the wounder. And if not the direct wounder, aka the parents, they'll find somebody else very similar in character, and that person is theoretically supposed to re-injure and heal and close the emotional file through healing. But as you know, Carmen, from your first husband, that rarely happens because the herder, I have a show on this, you might want to check it out. It's called The Herder Can't Be the Healer. And so as a result of this chasing after the pining, after the incomplete attachment to the primary caregiver, people end up pairing with people who are not emotionally available. And so they repeat the blueprint until they learn, or they get lucky in your case, or I don't think it was luck. I think you learned. I think because of your experience and because you are able to feel for other people, is it possible that you later on in life desired that? Your taste changed. Your tastes changed emotionally.
Well, I did have a religious experience before I married the second time my husband now. And I believe that based on that spiritual experience that I had with my faith, I was in a different environment, and therefore I chose from a different group of people versus where I was in the environment when I chose my first husband.
Okay. So maybe through that religious experience, you connected with God, higher power, however you choose to define this experience. And through that, you cleared your lens of perception on things, because that's a paradigm shift, isn't it? When we see one way and then we open our eyes through healing, through some sort of an aha experience, as you described it, then if you look at panel number 7, which is, thank you very much, up there, you can see that the cracked lens of perception begins to clear, and the truth lens is the lens through which we perceive when we're in our truth mind, when we're in our healthy mind, and through a lot of darkness, a lot of experience, and a lot of pain, sometimes people will seek out something else. They will seek out the light. And as a result, they will be attracted to the light as opposed to the Freud, or the repeated pattern of choosing the same old pathological pattern. So I'm really glad that whatever you call it, that you got lucky, or that you learned, you matured, and that you're with a wonderful person. And just wondering, because I want to read a little bit about the effects of a narcissistic father, specifically on her daughter, because you're a woman and you're calling in. And so let me turn to that part where
well, if I can just before you do that, if I
Sure.
could just add one more comment to this
Please.
phone call to kind
Yep.
of tie
Yep.
that up. The theme is that my first husband was a total narcissist.
Okay.
And I believe if I had not been raised the way that I was, I would have never chosen him. And the most important thing, and one of the most important decisions a woman can make in her life, is who she chooses for a mate.
Absolutely.
And who that mate often becomes the person that she has children with, which is my case. I did have one daughter by my first husband.
Yes.
Your whole life can be altered, and you continue on from with the abuse out of your childhood into your adulthood. Then you have a child with that narcissist, and then you've got another person brought into the generational abuse, if you will.
Right. That's right.
If I had anything that I could say to young people,
Okay.
is that before you get married and before you have children, take care of the baggage, the issues of your own childhood and your own life, because we make these mistakes of these choices that we make unaware, and we go in and we create new life and bring new people into the world to deal with these kinds of generational personality disorders, or whatever you want to call them, and the cycle just continues on generation after generation.
Yes, thank you for speaking to that.
If I could say anything to women and men too, don't get married, don't have children until you take care of and learn about what you've gone through in your own childhood. Because my parents, while they victimized us, they were victimized also
Of
by their
course,
parents.
they learned it from their source, and that source
That's
learned
right.
it from that source. And to refer to the theorist who talked about the multi-generational process, multi-generational transmission process, Murray Bowen, he tracked this down, and he talked about how each generation is going to get more and more disconnected and sick and break down. And you're right, unless we heal ourselves, we're going to pass it to the next generation. And so,
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
when my mother was 3, back in the late 1930s, her father took a gun and killed her mother, and then shot himself and orphaned her. And she went through, as a toddler, the horrors of that, and then was given off to an aunt and an uncle who then physically abused her, and then grew up in a home with alcoholics with another aunt and uncle,
Yeah.
and then left that home at 15 and got married.
I mean,
And
it's such a breakdown. It's and as you're describing it, people are either imploding or they're exploding, and they're projecting. And back to what you were saying, if we don't heal our childhood wounds, we have a very, very high likelihood of passing it on to the next generation. So I'm going to go on with some information. Thank you very, very much for calling in. And please do keep in touch with me. And again, I want to remind the audience that the Mindmap video series is a process that I videotaped of the Mindmap system. And it goes from panel 1 all the way through panel 9, and it's about 8 or 10 hours worth of therapy. There is a case study that I filmed right into the videos, and it is a way that you can do the Mind Map video series at a very, very inexpensive cost. Probably, let's see, that probably breaks down to about $19.95 a session. So please take advantage of it. This offer is good from now through January the 5th, 2019. Happy New Year, happy holidays, Merry Christmas. And that's my way of saying, please learn to think like a shrink. Please learn the system so that you have a pathway to healing. And again, this is a call-in show. Thank you so much, Carmen, for calling in. And please.
Okay, thank you for taking my call.
And happy holidays to you.
You too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And so I think being that this is epidemic in nature, I think we have a call in there. Okay. All right. This is an epidemic. Clearly the phones are ringing, and that's why I did part 2. So hello, you are on the couch with Dr. Judy. Your name, please?
Rudy.
Rudy?
Yes.
Hi, Rudy. Nice to talk to you. Where are you calling from?
Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay. And what was on your mind? What is on your mind right now that you would like some more information or insight about?
I think this episode is about narcissistic father abuse.
Yes, the damages on the daughter and the son. Yes.
Oh, okay. So I'm 36-year-old. I grew up in the country of Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that my dad, I felt like he was loving in the beginning, but as I grew up, I'm realizing now that he was really selfish.
Okay.
And what really got me to thinking about my relationship with my dad is a relationship that I've had probably 3 months ago that lasted for 2 months.
Okay.
And it was with a female covert narcissist.
A covert narcissist. And how did you know that she possessed these covert narcissistic traits? What made you think that?
So that's love bombing, devaluation, and destruction or discard.
Okay.
But it happened fast that made me question the whole situation because I think I'm a logical person. I'm a numbers person. Then the whole the dramatic, the radical change really got me thinking. So when I honestly learned about it by mistake, just going online one day when I was frustrated, trying to get depressed. So I went online. I only typed, this person likes to talk on the phone with me, but doesn't want to meet in person. And a phenomenal name, breadcrumbing, came up, which is stringing along.
Breadcrumbs. Is that what you said? Breadcrumbs?
Breadcrumbing.
Yeah, it's a perfect way of saying it. Yeah, so tell me how you experienced that.
So as soon as I realized, like, whatever she was doing matched matched what breadcrumbing was, and then after that, like, I just dug deeper and I realized that it's a narcissistic characteristic, really, like for some types of narcissists.
Yes.
I'm not if she was borderline or a covert somatic narcissist.
And sometimes those diagnoses are occur together. A lot of people ask me, can you be borderline and narcissistic? At the core, I think the narcissistic defense is more occupied with it's a harder defense. So they're more occupied with not being exposed, not being shamed and embarrassed, whereas with a borderline, their core is they do not want to be abandoned. But if you dig deeper with the narcissist, they don't really want to be abandoned. They'll abandon you first.
I guess she was a little bit of both, but that raised a lot once I started realizing that I was a victim of narcissism and it all ended. I thought when I looked deeper into the subject to realize who I am as an empath, I started to see narcissists that were in my life that I'm just starting. Like, my dad is one, as I mentioned, and that's the reason why I ended up, like, in a relationship with a narcissist. Now that I remember, I've been in many relationships with narcissists that I couldn't tell before. But I always end up leaving first when it doesn't make sense to me.
You know, and the more we know, I think we are going to be able to. And people are busting the system. They're not buying in because of all the information out there, hopefully including my Mindmap system. People are not suckers anymore to this system gone wrong. They're not going to succumb to being breadcrumbed, which the way I define it is you love bomb the person and then you start starving the person and they start becoming very needy and you give them little breadcrumbs just to keep them in the game, kind of like Las Vegas. Intermittent reinforcement is the strongest reinforcement schedule ever. So if you put somebody on an intermittent, meaning a partial reinforcement plan, you can hook them in really well, and especially if they're empathic, if they're kind, if they tend to be codependent, if they've been raised by narcissistic parents who they had to learn to please and dance to their tune, then the person playing that system gone wrong can easily capture and vampire a person like yourself. But you're too smart now. You're onto it.
Honestly, I just couldn't tell what was wrong with some people or with my dad even. Like, I always thought that he was just like someone who just goes off because he gets frustrated and it's not his fault. He's a victim narcissist, as they say.
Well, Go ahead.
Yes. And I guess my mom was a codependent because she doesn't carry his traits. She's more loving person. He acted like he loves us as kids, but he did certain things in certain situations where he showed his selfishness, which was not understandable at the moment.
Okay.
I always wanted to know what's wrong with these people. Some other people in the family too. Until this experience, the recent experience happened and really opened my eyes. I'm really grateful that it happened, actually, because I'd rather it to happen now
Sure.
than for it to happen 50 or 60.
Absolutely. Right. Okay. So what the Freud is going on here? Why are these people behaving like this? Because they've been injured at the causal level. So whatever it is that their parents did to them and whatever happened multi-generationally, they shut down, they developed a shell, they made decisions that it wasn't safe to trust people, it wasn't safe to love. So they basically cauterized their heart, they cauterized their emotions. And so their only way with people is to use them in general like objects. So it's not the same kind of a bonding that we think of as a human healthy bonding, which is, I refer to that as panel number 7, where you have that, you said you're a numbers guy, right? Yes?
So, like, I've never been to, like, the psychology. I'm in an engineering field.
Okay.
So I never thought of psychology as something that you have to be a certain person. Like, you have to read, like, which is something I didn't really like. I wanted to solve equations, do math problems, physics. But I always thought it was boring. But as soon as I started starting to learn psychology, I realized that it is the same like math.
I look at my metaphors in the mind map. I use a lot of biological metaphors, and the panel 7 represents the 1 + 1 is more than 2 in the case of a great relationship where there's synergy, where the light is shining through. So 1 and 1 obviously is supposed to equal 2, but the problem is when you're with a vampire, narcissistically injured person, they have a deep hole in the soul and they need to suck you dry because they get their energy from you. And so your 1 + 1 formula turns into less than 2 and sometimes even less than 1. You feel drained and so on.
That is true, because what I learned after that from just looking it up, that like they don't seek people that are stupid or not logical. They look for people that are logical so they can break their logic, because that's like a harder challenge for them, which is sick.
Yes.
I couldn't understand. Why would you look for a harder challenge when you just like go for someone that would take whatever you say to them and believe it?
Well, okay, sometimes they do that, and sometimes they go for people who are high level supply, someone with status, someone with money, someone with beauty, or a combination of. And then when they're done with that person, especially if that person has busted the game, then they're out because they don't want to be exposed. They would rather make the other person feel guilty and wrong and demeaned and devalued and so on, and at the end discarded, than to be busted for their game, because that will take their power down. And one thing that narcissistically injured people love is power. And how do you have power over someone? Well, breadcrumbing is a great way. It's that love bombing. Give them a lot, make them feel very special, and then start taking them off the pedestal, trigger their low self-esteem, and then have them come begging for more and make them work for it. Isn't that a great system of human slavery?
Yep, absolutely.
Sick, sick, very sick. A sick system of human slavery, relationship slavery. Yeah.
Yeah, and my only question was, I couldn't put myself in a certain category. Like, I don't know if I'm an empath or like a normal or a codependent, because I do have a mid-range narcissistic trait that do like appear sometimes, not often.
Okay.
But I'm a nice person in general. I don't seek conflicts, but I'm up for a challenge if I know that you're trying to challenge me. That's my narcissistic basically traits. Like
So whatever the label, okay? Labels are only as good as helping people to recognize and sort of loosely define. I'm more interested in the system gone wrong and correcting that into a system gone right. So if you keep your eye on your boundaries, if you are an empath and you keep your energy balanced and you don't allow for people to suck you dry, because you as an empath will feel it. And so these are your guidelines. Is 1 and 1 equaling at least 2? Is it a situation where you're feeling less than because of the relationship that you're in, whether it be with a boss or a friend or a husband, wife, lover? It doesn't matter. This is what you want to be looking for. So in your journey to healing, the boundaries are going to be really, really important. And I think pattern recognition is going to be important, and understanding your blueprint and who you're copying and what you're copying and who, most importantly, you're picking in your life. As Carmen said earlier on the show, the most important decision that we can make is who we pick to travel in our life with, and that's usually our mate. And I am going to do a show, by the way, on narcissistic friendships, because I know I talk a lot about husbands, wives, so on, brothers, sisters. I think it's important that we start recognizing who we pick as friends, because our friendships have a big impact on us. And our friendships are supposed to hold us up in good times and bad times, and give us honest, rigorous feedback, as opposed to demeaning and devaluing and destroying us. So I want to focus some attention on that. And please, by the way, feel free to call in for a free consultation, and do get your copy of the PDF version of the book. Anyone can get a free PDF version of my book, Healing Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And don't forget the Mindmap video series, which you can purchase now at a $400 discount, $195 between now and January 5th. And so please do feel free to call me during office hours.
Hey, that's good.
Okay. Any other quick thoughts or questions that you've got on your mind?
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so very much for calling in. Take care.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you. Okay. So many people out there being affected by these systems gone wrong. And so I want to read a little bit more about an article I found. I like to give credit where credit is due, by Anonymous. I love the author's name, Anonymous. And I think we have another caller. So let's focus on the needs of people out there calling in. Hi, you are on the couch with Dr. Judy. And your name, please?
Yes, my name is Raphael.
Hi, Raphael.
Texas.
From Texas?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for picking up the phone and calling in. And as you know, the topic of today is effects of narcissistic fathers, damaging effects on their sons, daughters. And so how do you relate to this particular subject?
Let me tell you. Well, my father, he was a narcissist.
Okay. And how do you know, what were the signs that you picked up?
Well, I didn't know until I began reading your book. And, well, he used to cheat on my mother.
Okay.
And
that's definitely selfish, yes?
Yeah, and then he'll blame her whenever he saw my mother talking to another man.
Yes.
He'll become extremely jealous. He'll blame her for cheating on him.
Right. Best defense is offense, right? So if he has her worried that she's doing something wrong, well, it's a great trial for a tactic. Did it work? Did she feel guilty?
Well, she always stayed with him, and I always asked her why. And but she was a codependent. She'll say, well, he does that, but he does other things for us.
Okay.
And so I grew up seeing all that chaos in my house. And so, but I didn't know what was going on until my 30s.
Okay.
I began. I decided to start a business on my own, and then all of my friends, they turned their backs on me because it was like winning the lottery for me. Everybody thought that they could come to the business and get everything for free.
Oh no. Well, okay. Now you're getting it.
Yeah,
The key
and
word
so
here
I
is
began.
free, right?
Yeah, and
So,
so I began wondering, why did everybody turn on me? It was like all of the friends I had were narcissistic, and so, but I didn't know until I got sick. I began having panic attacks. I
yes.
began dealing with colitis,
Yes.
and so I was very ill, and so I began looking for information about how can I heal.
Yeah.
And I came across your book because I realized that a lot of the symptoms were caused by, or could be caused by, being exposed to narcissistic people.
How long ago did you come across my book?
I bought it last year, but I've been listening to your shows about 3 years
I see.
on
Okay.
YouTube.
I see. Okay.
And
Okay. So in essence, how are you able to see things now in terms of your boundaries and recognition of who to pick into your life? Because you know the body and the mind are connected. And so if friends are not supporting us in just a basic way, if they're taking from us, which is what you're describing, you know, I can understand you open up a new, what was it, a restaurant?
No, I got a degree on professional commercial photography,
Okay.
and so I noticed a big demand on online businesses opening up. So I decided to start an online business in which people could ship over their products, and so I'll photograph them, and then they can use those photographs on their websites
I
or
see.
on any way of they could use it for marketing purposes.
Okay.
And so, and then I'll ship back the products to them. And so, but people around me seem to be quite narcissistic, and they were expecting me to drop everything I was doing to work for them.
To work for them.
And
I
then
see.
they'll play victim, and they'll say that I was the one who was treating them poorly.
Yeah, that's a common. It sounds like a what the Freud in terms of your
Yeah.
father. What he did to your mother is he cheated
Exactly.
and then he accused her. So this is a bit of a parallel process, and you can connect the dots that they're trying to guilt you and shame you and blame you, and in the meantime, they're not able to self-reflect and see that you work very hard on your business, and they can't just help themselves to whatever they want. That's not okay. And so I think in general, when our bodies are breaking down, I can definitely feel. I think I'm pretty much in the category of that empath person. And I can feel the disconnect. I might get a pain in my neck or my back, or I might get very tense in my jaws when people try to vampire me, or I could feel the energy. I'm very sensitive to it now. And of course, because I help so many people and I see that the damaging effects, I think I've learned over time to be quicker about eliminating people who don't work for me, or at least putting them in my outer circle so that it doesn't contaminate me. Because it you know, like you said, mind, body, soul, it's infecting us, and it's ripping open old childhood wounds and triggering us. And once we start understanding that we're not the cause of that, and we process those feelings that really belong to mommy dearest and daddy dearest, particularly the narcissistic mommy and daddy dearest, then we can pattern recognize quicker, not sign up for friends, bosses, coworkers, spouses who will drain us of our energy, and play a better game of life.
Exactly. And the reason why I'm calling is because when people kind of like to, I'll say, brag about me, about having a business, and they like to tell other people. And so when, I'm not sure if they're narcissistic, but a lot of the times that triggers that treat on them. And so they get very excited, and they also think that they can get free work from me. And so it's been very hard for me to socialize and to relate to other people.
You know, this is a very big challenge, and that's why I think I'm going to start a group for people who have done the mind map work and need support and want to meet like-minded people. The problem is that not enough people know how to draw boundaries and behave in healthy ways. And so what are we going to do? Eliminate the world? Well, I don't know. I don't have a great answer here. I think at least try the peaceful healing dialogue, which is up on my forums section. If you go to my website, drjudywtf.com, you'll see forums, and there will be the peaceful healing dialogue. It's also in my book, and if you request that free consultation, we'll give that to you. It's 15 minutes long. We have a beautiful team of people that work anywhere from $95 a session all the way through to my fee, and you can call and find out about it and match with the right therapist. We do a lot of Skype therapy. We work with people all across the globe, and I'm very proud of my team. Thank you, everyone on the team, for your knowledge and your willingness to continue to grow. And for a little bit more psychoeducation, the main effect on a daughter is that they don't feel special when the father's narcissistic. That father tends to pick on her and make her feel unimportant. The main thing about a father to a son is that son will never feel that he's good enough because the father always has to outshine. Have you had that experience?
Yes, I've been working a lot on my self-esteem.
Okay.
Especially because I trigger people, or I seem to trigger people so much that I felt that my work wasn't valuable, and also myself.
Yeah.
And so, and I've been struggling a lot with guilt, also when setting boundaries or.
Oh, okay. I know you've read it because you've read my book, but I'm going to refer you back to that peaceful healing dialogue where you can just briefly, I'll demo it for a minute and just say, hey, friends, I want to talk to you about my business and my relationship with you, and is this a good time? Because that's the first thing you have to do is respect the person and ask them if it's a good time to talk. And if they say yes, you can go on with it and say, look, I really value you as a friend, if you do. Maybe you value them less now that you see some of these characteristics. I'd like to tell you the truth about how I'm feeling when you use my products for free. The truth is that it feels very, whatever you want to say, what would be a word that you would use? It feels how? How does it feel when people take from you?
Well, what I do is that I try to explain to them that I'm just like them, and that I have to wake up every morning and get up and go to work.
Sure.
And so it feels like they're taking advantage of me, or they're disrespectful of my time.
Okay, and that's what you would tell them in the peaceful healing dialogue. When you do blah, 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 it feels very, very disrespectful, and it's in conflict with my friendly feelings toward you, and I would like the opportunity to discuss this with you because I would like to get this straight so that there's not that crossover, and then I don't have to feel this way about you.
Sure. You know what has happened, that they sometimes pretend they didn't hear the conversation.
Yeah.
And they asking, and so I have to cut them off then.
Yeah.
And so, and that's my struggle when I feel guilty and I feel lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if I did the right thing.
Okay, I'm gonna say something to that. Okay, you will feel guilty. You will feel lonely. It's natural. But you say the word I. Pretty soon, if you surround yourself with people like this, they're going to chop into that I, and there's going to be nothing left of you. Do you understand? So you have to protect the I, not in a unhealthy narcissistic way, but in a healthy narcissistic way. There is healthy narcissism, which is protecting the self, preserving the self, nourishing the self, setting good boundaries, not allowing people to penetrate through who are going to demean, devalue, destroy, use us. Okay, so when you say, I will feel guilty, just think about how you will feel if you allow them to basically eat you psychologically alive. There will be no I. Understood?
Sure. Understood.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very, very much for calling in and for your kind words. I'm really glad that you have the book, and refer back to it and refer back to the part about narcissistic parenting, and keep connecting the dots so that you can understand why you think and feel the way you feel, and then draw those boundaries. I'm talking to everybody now. Draw those boundaries so that you don't get sick. And so just a couple of other points about narcissistic fathers, and then I'll move over to Shrink That Tune. So here are some signs that your dad has narcissistic tendencies. And this is from an article by Mark Banchik. Have to sneeze, it's not coming out. Okay, Dad was self-centered and pretty vain. Dad used people for his own good. Dad was charismatic. Charm will bring people in. No one had an imagination like Dad, meaning he was grandiose and often exaggerated his achievements and ambitions. Dad didn't take criticism well. Remember, no ability to self-reflect or self-correct. Dad could be aloof and unsympathetic. This is the reference to the coldness, the emotional cutoff, the lack of empathy. Dad wasn't around a lot. Of course not. You were not number one. Dad did what he wanted when dealing with you, not considering your feelings. Dad wanted you to look great for his friends and colleagues. So it wasn't for you that he wanted you to look great. He wanted you to look great so you could be his little trophy and show you off. Dad, you couldn't really get what you needed from him, of course, because he was more focused on his own needs. So in general, a father affects a narcissistic daughter by making her feel unsatiated in life, not feeling that they ever get enough, and feeling that they have to compete with their siblings for their time, and mainly a feeling of not being special. In the case of the son of a narcissistic father, there's a core belief that builds around the theme of you cannot measure up because Dad is better than you, and he will always compete with you. And if you outgrow him, that's not good, because narcissists like power and control. So with that said, I'm going to shrink that tune. And the tune is a tune by Madonna. And thank you, my song picker, for it was filled with gifts from Heather. So thank you very much, Heather. So this song, "Oh Father" by Madonna, it's funny that way you can get used to the tears and the pain. What a child will believe you never loved me. So Madonna's talking about getting used to that. You can't hurt me now. I got away from you. I never thought I would. You can't make me cry. You once had the power. I never felt so good about myself. So it seems that she's defending herself against this kind of pain. Seems like yesterday I laid down next to your boots and I prayed for your anger to end. Oh, Father, I have sinned. Reference to it's always the child's fault. Remember Alice Miller? The child would rather be the bad one, and the father is the good one. You can't hurt me now. I got away from you. I never thought I would. You can't make me cry. You once had the power. I never felt so good about myself, probably because she's laying down boundaries. Oh, Father, you never wanted to live that way. You never wanted to hurt me. Why am I running away? Oh, Father, you never wanted to live that way. You never wanted to hurt me. Why am I running away? Well, she's running away because even if he didn't want to, he is. And so she's appropriately protecting herself. Maybe someday when I look back, I'll be able to say, you didn't mean to be cruel. Somebody hurt you too. Wow, Madonna's aware of the multi-generational transmission process and the blueprint of psychopathology. You can't hurt me now. I got away from you. I never thought I would. You can't make me cry. You once had the power, and now I never felt so good about myself. And so that's the bottom line, is when she frees herself of from the clutches of this narcissistic father, she can now start to feel good about herself. So thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to take a little break around the holidays, do some reruns. Remember to subscribe to our show, request a free consultation and PDF book, and order the Mindmap video series, $400 off of the $595 price, and it's now $195 for a very short period of time. And learn the system. I think that it'll help organize your mind, help you think like a shrink, and help you to have boundaries that are necessary to have a healthy sense of self. Thank you, all the callers, and thank you, audience. Wishing you a very healthy and happy holiday season and new year. And I'll see you next year. Good night, everybody.